SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary Fife, Mvskoke Radio. Gary Fife, Geogificados. Welcome to our program today. We were going to have a couple of things to work with this morning. First of all, the weather forecast has been looking at triple digits coming up pretty quick. And so we're going to speak with someone from the Social Services Department about air conditioners being provided for our elders. And with the discussions about mascots, images, I think a foundation change within American society. We're going to revisit a piece we did a couple of years ago regarding one of the children's songs that most of us grew up with, the old 10 Little Indians thing, in a discussion we had with a man who analyzed that and had quite a few things to say about how it might shape opinions. But first of all, let me get going here. Taylor Tiger, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good morning, Gary, here on Mvskoke Radio. As we were just saying to our listeners, we have triple digits being forecast for the upcoming week, 100 degrees or better. And most of us Oklahomans are used to it. Well, not used to it, but have dealt with it. And we have a program with the Mvskoke Creek Nation to assist elders and those eligible families to deal with it by providing air conditioners, right?
That's correct.
Okay, well, first of all, let's get a quick description of your department there and what's its function.
So the social services, we provide services for rent, mortgage, utilities, burial, medical travel, and of course we have our energy program as well as our AC programs.
Now, this is not just free money. It's designed to help those who may be in financial distress on fixed incomes and other challenges within their financial world, correct?
That is correct. We have two different AC programs. One is a LIHEAP AC program. So that's for any federally recognized tribal member living in our jurisdiction that has low income. And then we do have our tribal AC program. That is for Creek citizens. You don't necessarily have to live within the jurisdiction. That is mainly for our Creek elders, 55 or older, or any Creek citizen with a medical need for that air conditioning.
Now, a lot of us, I'm sure, will fall into those categories of being in financial distress, as most journalists are, and elders, fixed income. Looks like I fit a lot of those categories. Now, if someone was interested in being served by this program, let's repeat, I guess, and review those eligibility requirements there.
So for our tribal AC program, you do have to be a Creek citizen. You'll either have to be 55 years of older or need a medical need for air conditioning and not have adequate air conditioning in your home.
All right. Now, we've talked with staff members there about this program in the past, and I think it's important to probably repeat this information. The units that you provide and the services that you can help folks with are not meant to air condition someone's entire home, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that question.
In other words, real simply, these units are not going to cool your entire house. It's designed for limited use, right?
That's correct. It's just a simple window unit.
Okay, now I had one of those cranked up last night, and that certainly made a difference. Uh, the medical need that you cited there, let's take a second and examine that. Now, this would be someone who had been receiving medical care and had a condition that would not do well in Oklahoma heat, right? So this is designed to help them there.
Right.
The capacities there now, can you fill me in there? We said it pretty much one room, like a bedroom or something, but it doesn't seem like it's going to cool off an entire living room or a kitchen or something like that, primarily a smaller room, right?
It should cool off your living room. It's a 10,000 BTU air conditioning unit. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but they are pretty decent size.
Well, good. I'm not pretty sure. I'm not sure what that meant either. But what we want to do is give folks an idea of what this thing will do. Now, this program, as I looked at it in past years, was very important to a large number of people, and the staff members gave me a look at some of your storage units and big units, but they were almost empty because the popularity of the program. Now, do you have some kind of feel for numbers or the demand?
Well, right now we have 2 loaners. They've already been given out this season, so we don't have any loaners available. This season, so far, we have given out 21 ACs on our tribal program and 9 ACs on our LIHEAP program.
And these are people who are going to qualify there, right?
They have already qualified and got their AC.
Now, have you or your staff people there noticed any increase in demand over the past couple of years as more people, I hope, become aware of the program? But, has the usage numbers been rising?
Right now, there's not a significant rise. We still have about 60 air conditioners left on our tribal AC. Last year we gave out 75. So we still have quite a bit left.
Now, when you resupply your inventory, do weather indications figure in there? Do you say, well, it's going to be hot next year, so we better get more than we had last year? I mean, do you figure those in?
Well, that's not really my area of expertise. That goes higher than me. But I would assume they figure in weather and how many ACs we gave out the previous year.
And last year it was 75, right?
Last year we gave out 75. So they budgeted for 85 this year.
Good move. Where are these units going? Can you kind of is there some way to get a feel for who's requesting this assistance?
I don't have exact numbers. Most of our clients are in the Omogi and Creek County area. There are a few that live outside our jurisdiction. There are a few McAllister, Oklahoma City, but for the most part, they do live around here.
For someone who lives out of district, would they come to your office to pick up these units, or would you arrange to have an outlet in their area provide these?
Normally, we do ask them to come to our office, pick up the vouchers so they can go to Neil's to pick up that air conditioner. However, we have been working with senior services with our loaners. They've been helping get those to citizens that cannot come to our office.
Now, who typically is requesting your assistance there? Is it primarily elders, or is it like families, people with income limits?
It is primarily our elders that are requesting these services.
And so they will have themselves or someone come to your office and pick up the unit and take it home and pop it into the window then?
Right.
The the help that you can provide there just seems perfect. I mean, for some folks who might live out in the sticks, as we say, and don't have connections to these big units to cool everything off. It seemed like it would make a difference in their lives. Now, have you had some feedback? Folks talk to you about what happens when they get one of these air conditioners?
I have not heard back from anyone that's received an air conditioner. There are a few that will reapply within 2 years to get a newer air conditioner. But other than that, I've not heard any feedback from any of them.
Okay, do they get to keep the old one?
They do get to keep the old one.
Yeah, what are you going to do with a used air conditioner, huh?
Right.
Right. I don't know. I'd take one. I got one off my brother, and it works just fine, and I'm happy with it. The kind of help that you give, I think, as I said before, would make a difference in their lives. Now, without too much feedback, you've got to have some indication of the service you provide and the impact. How is it, perhaps you feel personally, when you know that your work and your program there really does help somebody out?
Oh, it's wonderful. I don't get a lot of feedback on the AC programs, but I do get feedback from clients utilizing other services, and it warms my heart to know that it helps them out and helps them get back on their feet.
Right, or helps them relax if they're not on their feet.
Right.
Okay, now, if someone wants to apply for the program, I'm sure there are, as we say, qualifications and a procedure. So when someone were to call you up, what kind of information do you need from them?
Well, first I would need to check if they've had previous assistance with air conditioning. So you cannot only apply and receive an air conditioner every 2 years. I'll need to know their age and if they meet medical need for it, if they are under 55. And normally we also look at income because we also try to utilize our LIHEAP program. Since those are federal funds, we do try to use those funds up as well.
Yeah, and I presume they would have to have some sort of documentation.
Right. So we normally ask for, the basics: tribal cards, Social Security cards, IDs, birth certificates. We do have an inadequate air form that can be filled out by a professional, and that would be like the landlord, senior services, housing can fill it out. I had one filled out by National Council representative. And then we also have a medical need form that can be filled out by a medical professional. And then, again, we ask for income verification, so that could be pay stubs or an award letter if the client is on Social Security disability.
Would something like a utility bill be useful there?
Only as resident verification, but resident verification would only be used in the case of our LIHEAP, just to make sure that they are within our jurisdiction. But as far as our tribal program, they do not have to live within the jurisdiction. They would just have to be willing to come to our office to pick up that voucher.
But the tribal members who are in California may not find it economically useful to drive to Oklahoma.
That is correct, because we do have a contract with Neils to distribute those air conditioners, so they would have to be able to make it to our office and then over to Neils to receive that air conditioner.
Okay. As the rest of the summer starts to crank up a bit, do you think that you've got enough inventory to make it through the summer, or do you have a feeling you may have to say, well, I'm sorry, we're all cleaned out here?
I think we can make it through the summer. We have about 106 air conditioners left.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good news. So hopefully people listening to this program will take advantage of it and give you a call there. All right, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to wrap this up and then I'll get out of your way and let you get on with your day. But if someone is interested in applying for the program, once again, what do they have to do? How do they get a hold of you?
They can contact me by phone. My phone number is 918-549-2445. The forms are also available on the website under Social Services AC program.
Okay, and for people who just are not as computer literate or may not have one, once again, you do have that phone number, right?
Yes, they can always give us a call, and we can mail one out to them.
Okay. Well, Taylor, I'm going to say thank you so much. I think you provide a very much needed and a wonderful service for folks who really can really use this sort of help. So we wish you the best and good luck with it. Oh, by the way, one thing that just popped into my mind, has this virus made any difference at all? Do people mention it?
It has impacted the work we do here quite a bit. We see a larger influx of applications coming in. It's not necessarily impacted the AC program, but it has impacted our other programs.
Right, people out of work and all kinds of things that are affecting them.
Yes.
All right. Well, Taylor Tiger, thank you so much once again. And if you've got something else to share in the future, please let us know. And if our summer continues to boil, then we may want to revisit this again and see if somebody out there could use your help. But
All right.
Okay. Taylor Tiger of the Social Services Program. Now, if you are in need of an air conditioner and you qualify for their program, we heartily suggest that maybe you want to look into this and get some help. If you know of an elder that could probably use this help, then see what you can do for them. I'm going to take a short pause here, and then we're going to be back with a look at 10 Little Indians.
Who am I? Am I native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Okay, we're back here on Mvskoke Radio here on the Brew, and this next piece we have to share with you is something we did actually a couple of years ago, and somebody brought up the idea that maybe the way kids are educated in their younger days will definitely have an effect on their attitudes as they grow up. One of the sacred cows that we poked was a song called 10 Little Indians that I'm sure we all have had to sing or whatever, and it was shared with us. People thought it was a good thing at the time, but maybe it wasn't. But let's go ahead and roll this piece, and we'll see what we got here.
My name is Alex Jacobs. I'm a freelance writer, spoken word poet, and a visual artist. I'm Akwesasne Mohawk, but I've been based in Santa Fe, New Mexico for the last 20 years.
All right, Alex, I saw the piece that you'd written for Indian Country Today. Looking at the old nursery rhyme that most of us have heard in our childhood about 10 little Indians, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious as to see, what motivated you to first stop and take a look at that and then want to follow up and trace its origins.
Well, yeah, we have Indian Country Today. We had a stable of native writers, researchers, freelancers, and editors. And Julianne Jennings first covered this, I think in 2012, as an op-ed, an opinion piece. And she hasn't been writing for the last year or so. I believe she's Lakota or Anishinaabe. I'm not quite sure at this point. But she's the one that traced it back to an American songwriter who was well known, named Septimus Winter. And all the way back to 1864 or 1868. It's hard to. I followed that research, but it's hard to pin down a date when it was written or when it was introduced or when it was made available, you know. But those are the furthest back dates of when it appeared. So she did the piece, and one of my editors assigned me the story to look further into it. And so I researched and found a lot more, even current and contemporary music, not just the children's rhymes and the poems and the books, you know. There's even rock and roll done. There's a crazy version done by the Yardbirds called 10 Little Indians, but it was written by Harry Nilsson, a great songwriter in the 70s and 80s, I guess. And he did like a biblical version of all these sins. And although it wasn't, he says it wasn't the Ten Commandments, it's very biblical in that these 10 Indians, these 10 people, that they're not necessarily committing any crimes, but things happen to them that shouldn't happen to them.
10 little Indians standing in a line. One stood looking at another man's wife. Then there were 9 little Indians, their hearts all full of...
Let me ask you, were you like most of us? Did you hear this as a child?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It was used for counting in schools. It still is. And I heard from some European friends that it's used to teach English as well in some countries in Europe. And so, yeah, this is, I mean, a lot of my art, my poetry and my art is based on what you can say is already in people's minds. You know, you're hitting the buttons. And you're kind of making people replay or recall imagery and phrasing, you know? And so, yeah, this is right up my alley as far as 10 Little Indians and what it means to people, because it does mean something whether you know it or not. It's buried inside your memory.
Now, I want to know what your reaction is. I could imagine it's changed since you were little to reaching a professional writing stage in your life. Perception of that particular tune has changed. Would you say?
Yeah, sure. It has. You know, I mean, I don't know. Back then, we've heard it over time and over our own lives, and so it even has changed, you know, in our own lives, in our own times. You just felt a little bit weird about it, you know, every time you heard it, as you became from a child to maybe a teenager to an adult with children, you know. You did feel something weird and strange going on.
Have you ever heard any stories about what the song meant or where it came from, or possibly who sang it once or twice in a particular age?
Well, it was actually Yeah, like I said, it goes back to the 1860s, and it was performed at minstrel shows, and became a standard of blackface minstrel shows. And over time, of course, the N word was, was thought to be insensitive in future generations, and it changed back to Indians. So apparently it was Indians first, and then I don't know if you want to call it political correctness or as it was performed in different shows, it was Indians for most of its life, and then it became soldiers.
Now, before you go any further, let me do something for our listeners here. I know that the N-word there is highly offensive to many people these days. So if you would, Alex, if we need to use that phrase again, just refer to N-word. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Well, now go on with your story, please.
Well, then it even became, over time, because it relates to children and counting and language, you have teddy bears and animals and bunnies. And lately, they've had bunnies dressed up as Indians. And there's even an award-winning book about this, Bunnies Dressed Up as Indians, a counting book. That's actually sold at the National Museum of the American Indian in, I believe, Washington, D.C., and maybe New York. And somebody just did not vet this, It's an award-winning book. But they just dress up these bunnies like Indians, and there's no, stuff like this doesn't have to be authentic, but it's just a pastiche of tribes. A mixture of plains and pueblo and woodlands, and if you're going to do it, you might as well make it look authentic. If you're teaching something, you might as well teach that, well, this is what these pueblo Indians look like, even though they're dressed up like bunnies or whatever. So that wasn't even done. But of course, over time, it's been these with animation now, with TV and cartoons and animation. Yeah, some of them are just, the old ones are quite ugly with stereotypical faces, and the chanting and the war drum sometimes, and then they just become cute, just cute little Indian beings, but all of them dressed, most of them just down to breechcloth and moccasins and headbands,
You bring up a subject that I do remember as a kid. I believe it was a Popeye cartoon where he was rescuing the damsel and had to fight off these Indians, and as he was knocking them out and into graves, hitting them so hard that they fell into the earth, and that turned into a grave. That while he was doing that, he began singing this little chant until he had indeed put 10 of them under the ground. Do you perhaps recall that?
Well, now that you mention it, yeah, I probably do. I like Popeye, and I liked Alice the Goon, and all that stuff. But there was another one that in my research, it reminded me too. It brought me back, and that was the Walt Disney Silly Symphony, and we found the actual video, and I remember the Old King Cole, and a major part of this, I don't know, it's several minutes long, and they go through all the Disney and fairy tale storyland characters that all the kids know, and Little Bo Peep and Peter Piper and all that stuff. But the 10 Little Indians, actually, it's a big part of the cartoon, and there's a part there where they not only do their song, but they start dancing and war whooping, and all of Storyland goes along with them. So you're imagining, children watching this also doing this, and that's where we get that war whoop. It goes along with the 10 Little Indians, and so it's ingrained. All these children are now adults and pass it on to their children, And so our children are affected by this to this day.
Right. I would imagine it is indeed still being used as a teaching tool in schools here in Indian America and Indian country. I imagine it's still out there. Now, I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard any other stories about how this song was sung by different people? The reason I ask is I had a good friend that I highly respect. For some reason heard that particular tune, and we got to discussing it. And she said it was being sung by U.S. Army soldiers at a fort in North Dakota, I believe. They were watching the Mandans fall over and die because of the smallpox-infected blankets that they had been given. Now, that really shocked me. I thought, what, this little innocent little tune that really meant this? Have you ever run across that by any chance?
Not historically. No, I've never actually heard that.
It's kind of a tough one to think that something you thought was so innocuous actually had this kind of almost grisly background. Now, in today's world, as many people re-examine items of our history and culture, we've seen a few of these sorts of things pop up. But this one seems to permeate the basic education that's given to American children and indeed children around the world. And if you think about it, it seems wrong. So if you had a magic wand and could change things, what would you want to do to show people the true meaning of this song?
Well, Bill Haley and the Comets did a version in the 50s, and the Beach Boys in the 60s. And like I told you, Nilsson and the Yardbirds did a version, a more political version, in the 70s. But in one sense, it's not going away. I think every time it pops up, you can it's a moment to educate the educators and the schools. In the sense that it's kind of not going away, I think we all have to make that effort to edify and teach people and to do more on media. And I think the mascot issue is actually a place to tie this in, because again, when people talk about Native American mascots on school sports teams or whatever, and when you talk to people who don't know much or anything about Native American people, the first thing they do is they go down their list. Oh, I visited a reservation. Oh, my buddy in World War II was an Indian. So they tell you everything they know, and it's not much. And a lot of it is based on maybe that Popeye cartoon, maybe that Walt Disney cartoon. So the 10 Little Indians and the War Whoops, that's all within their repertoire of what they know about Indians. And if you just sit there like a medicine man and don't say anything, they will tell you absolutely everything they know in a minute or two, and you will you'll find out where they stand. So I think it's that moments like that, and any moment you get in media, in print, on the internet, on radio and TV, to educate people about this. And actually, the original version, before it became, I think it was kind of standardized or people got the meaning of the 10 Little Indians going away, which is, again, part of history. The kids today will tell you we thought they were all dead, Why is that? Well, because of stuff like this, 10 Little Indians. But on the original song, as these characters were going away and dying, the last one, living all alone, he got married, and then there were none. That was in the original. And that was used in some versions. So even though they killed the first 9, the last one he married in, which is kind of the whole Manifest Destiny or the original BIA or the government programs, was to assimilate the Indians, so they disappear culturally. So even this song, the original version, which isn't used that much anymore, that was part of a program and agenda too. One little Indian living all alone, he got married, and then there were none.
Sort of like getting elimination and assimilation all in one package.
Yeah, and it's why was that dropped over time, and it just became the 10 Little Indians dying off, and of course it was cleaned up so that children singing that didn't really know they were talking about death and dying and actual genocide. And there is a legal and there's a lot of legal and moral issues in it,
Right. Now, this article has been out for some time in Indian country today. Have you had any reactions from any of the people you know or have met, casually perhaps, or good friends? Have they said anything about what you wrote?
Well, a few people did. A few people did. I got emails mostly, but the actual there was a lot of people sharing this particular piece, which was kind of surprising and good. A lot of educators. I heard from a lot of educators or people who said they shared it with other educators, and it was there was over 4,000 Facebook shares and dozens of copies and letters and postings, and tweets on it and printed and mailed. So, that's a good thing when you're writing as a freelancer and as a part of a group. How we were able to work together and get it out, and we did our job, and the people reading it and absorbing it, it's now in their repertoire to help them do their job.
Well, perhaps just a little discussion here might help a few down here that hadn't thought about it before. Alex, I'm going to ask you if there's a final thought you'd like to add, and then we'll get out of your way.
Well, Agatha Christie, one of the world's English language most famous authors, millions and millions of books. This book, and it was originally called 10 Little N-Words, and they retitled it to And Then There Were None, which is the last words of that nursery rhyme, 10 Little Indians. Sold over 100 million copies, one of the biggest selling books ever. And there was all these movies made about it. So, it's there. And I think in part of our education, we can't ban it or get in a political correctness huff. It's all about education. It's in the people's minds, and we have to, educate ourselves and educate other people because it's in there, And even like that kid's book, what is it called? 10 Little Rabbits. And it's even in Walking Dead, the popular TV show, and now it's in a rock and roll play, Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. And we may not like to hear about Andrew Jackson, and we may not like that people are paying tickets to go see Bloody Bloody Jackson. And the young people, it's one of the things they like to do is dance this 10 Little Indians, and when they put it on the play in their high schools and stuff. You know, we can't really stop that, but we should be engaged with it and let people know, if you hear about people doing the production, to kind of get involved, you know? I mean, it is history, and Jackson was a genocidal maniac, you know, so you can't change that. But you can change and educate people when they want to put on a show like this.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. Education is the most effective tool in changing these minds. Alex Jacobs, thank you so much for your time here. We appreciate you talking with us and the piece. Now, if someone wanted to go back and read it, where could they find it?
Indian Country Today MediaNetwork.com, and you can go to it would be in culture or education. I believe it's most easily found on the education department. You have you have culture, news, history, education, and or you can, if you see my name first anywhere, you can go to my name. But it's at Indian Country Today MediaNetwork.com and go to education. And if there's 2012, if you want to go into the archives, her name's Julianne Jennings, and she did an article 2012 that did the early research.
I'm going to have to go look that up. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your educating us and sharing this information with our listeners. Maybe that'll be one small step, as has been said, toward the right direction. So thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Gary.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians, 4 little, 5 little, 6 little Indians, 7 little, 8 little, 9 little Indians, 10 little Indian boys, 10 little, 9 little, 8 little.
Story of 10 Little Indians. The article is still out there, and this was shared here this morning in light of the discussions we have had and are ongoing now with name changes, retiring of mascots, I think a rethinking of some of America's basic foundations and how these things came about, and perhaps some idea of what the feelings are behind some of the protests and demonstrations and counter-protests and people showing up, getting ready to get mad at each other. Anyway, I tell you what, we're going to take another short pause here, and we're going to be back with a story of a man who spoke on National Public Radio talking about being Indian.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
All right, this next piece is a man named George Kozer. It's supposed to be. And hopefully I didn't get the archives mixed up and get the wrong piece. But I was on the program called StoryCorps, where NPR, National Public Radio, talks to different people in our society about the events that are important to them. But let's give a listen to Mr. Kozer. George, since we're both fellow Oklahomans and grew up in this area, we know that our people, the Mvskoke Creek Nation, wasn't perhaps as well known as tribes like the Sioux or the Navajo or even the Cherokees. But we managed to preserve a lot of culture and family tradition and things like that. For you growing up in this area, what was it like? Did you include a lot of Muskogee tradition in the way you grew up? Did your family include that, or how did that happen?
Yeah, we did. My father and mother, full blood Mvskoke Creek Nation citizens, very fluent in the language. Our language was their first language, so I grew up listening to the Muskogee language, or what is called Creek today, but that was spoken in our house, and also English. So, and I grew up listening to that. Plus, my grandmother, she didn't speak any English, and I used to stay with her, so I got to hear the Muskogee language quite often. My uncles and aunts, they all spoke the language, so I grew up hearing the language, and we attended our ceremonies of the tribe, and also we went to church, and even our church was done in the Muskogee language, Creek language. So I got to hear quite a bit of the Muskogee language growing up.
So Hesje Estongo was commonplace in your home.
It's real common.
Hello, how are you? Was it an opportunity for you to really become deeply immersed in Muskogee culture? You mentioned the Christian church, and that was an outside influence. But was it something that you knew deep in your heart? I mean, that you were Muskogee and that we were different from all the other tribes around, even in Oklahoma?
Well, what I've experienced is, growing up, we attended the dances, the ceremonies of our different grounds because of my father's side, and my mother, she belonged to the Methodist Church, so we attended both, and I think that right there was really what really shaped my life as being who I am today, and I really felt like I was very fortunate to attend both, but I really enjoy today having that influence from our traditional way of life.
Mm-hmm.
I see how important it is today.
It sounds kind of like you're in the same boat as many of us. We sort of grew up as amphibious creatures. We could exist in the water world of our own people, and then out on the dry land of the dominant society, the people who populate Oklahoma. In going to school and your education, were you taught a lot about our own people here, or did the school kind of focus on the development of this state after settlement? I mean,
Well, there wasn't hardly any mention of in Oklahoma history. It was all about Oklahoma and not about the native people. If there was anything about natives, it was just very short. But my teachings, like I said, were from my family, and I grew up hearing stories about the land allotment. My great great uncle was a man named Chittohajo, Crazy Snake. That's what they called him in English. And so I got to hear stories like that from my mother. That was her relative. So I grew up hearing things like that, which to me was a very good education, historical wise.
did it ever raise questions in your mind that we were taught about the famous Oklahoma land run, but never heard anything about our own people whose land was being run over?
Well, we were told about that in school, but it like I said, it really didn't to me. And I can speak personally about what I saw was it really didn't dawn on me till years later about when you're a young child, growing up in school, you just hear what has been taught, but you really don't really get to examine it. I didn't really examine it till I became older, and when I did, it gave me a different feeling.
Yeah.
George, will you tell Gary what kind of school you attended? Were there other Native students in your school, or was it predominantly white students?
Well, I went to a Catholic school from the first grade to the sixth, and it was a mixture of they were all white, but then there were different nationalities. we had people that were of German descent, of Italian descent. Also, we had Mexicans there. We had black people there, and a few Indians at this Catholic school I went to, which I really enjoyed. I mean, it just because we already had a mixture of these people, and so it really gave me a better outlook on life going to grade school.
Did that also give you any favorite childhood memories?
Yeah, it sure did. I can remember my friends that I grew up with from the first grade. You know, we were treated just like everybody else then, and we were just little kids. But when you're little kids, you all play together. Sometimes you don't face any racism or anything like that as a child until sometimes when you get older, then you'll face something like that. But I can remember growing up, some of my best friends, even today, almost 66 years later, they're still my friends today from early age. They were really good young people.
As a child, race really didn't matter.
At that time, it didn't matter.
What about on the flip side of that coin, some memories that weren't quite so nice?
Well, I can remember even in my neighborhood, there was some families that called us names, and it didn't feel very good being called names, and we knew that these names were hateful, but sometimes we retaliated as being young people, and it didn't feel good. So, but and I look back at it now as being a product of what these coming from their ancestors.
George Kozer talking about some of his life's experiences on a national public radio program called StoryCorps. The name of the Washington, D.C. football team has been commanding a lot of headlines lately. We do have a bit of information to share. Let's see here now. A couple of the national networks have mentioned it, but generally they aren't talking to Indian people. They're talking to lawyers and other kinds, and some people who are, quote, self-identified, unquote, as Indians, saying, they don't object to it, but well, I wonder if they actually got out and away from the Beltway to talk to some real Indians out in our neck of the woods. Anyway, this is a press release from the National Congress of American Indians and their response to the Washington football team's commitment to addressing the name change. Now, right now, there has been no formal name change activity. There has been discussions of several possible names, but no deadline. Here we changed it today kind of announcement. But on July the 3rd of this year, the National Congress of American Indians welcomed the Washington NFL team's announcement of its plan to conduct a, quote, thorough review, unquote, of the team's name and mascot, which represents an important breakthrough for Indian country in its long-standing effort to change the name and mascot. Quote, "We are encouraged by the Washington NFL team's announcement that it will conduct a thorough review of the team's name and mascot. This moment has been 87 years in the making, and we have reached this moment thanks to decades of tireless efforts by tribal leaders, advocates, citizens, and partners to educate America about the origins and meaning of the R word," said NCAI President Fawn Sharp. NCAI looks forward to immediately commencing discussions with the league and the team about how they will change the name and mascot. A prompt table for doing so, and the Indian country deserves nothing less. The time to change is now. NCAI is the oldest, largest, and most representative national organization serving American Indian and Alaska Native tribal nations and their citizens, and has been leading Indian country's movement to eradicate offensive native-themed mascots from sports and popular culture for more than 50 years. Okay, now I do remember back in the 70s, a delegation of Indian organizational leaders got together and actually went to the headquarters of the Washington football team and sat down for a discussion. The talks were amicable, but no change. They said they weren't going to do anything. However, they did at that point discard the Indian princess-type outfits worn by their cheerleaders. Now that we felt was a wonderful step forward, and we joined NCAI in applauding the decision to sit down and talk after years of saying we will, quote, never, unquote, change the name. Now that discussion has been localized somewhat. Now the Union School District here in the Tulsa area is also looking at the possibilities that its name and mascot will also change. In a meeting of their school board just a couple of nights ago, they decided they would form a committee to study the idea. That's not a formal change or anything like that, but we think it's a step forward in including Native American people, particularly the Cherokee and Creek nations, in those discussions, and the possibility that maybe their position isn't so hardline as they thought it was. I think that's a good idea. We need to talk and people to understand, yes, these things have been affecting us for all these years, and it's not a term of honor, never has been for us, and even is a dictionary-defined racial slur. So I know people are going to be saying, well, it's tradition and all of this, but traditions change. I mean, geez. Entire football teams have disappeared from one city to reappear in another one and taking their traditions with them. Once they perhaps make a change, lives are not going to be ruined. The earth will not stop rotating. Students will pick up a new name and honor that as a tradition. Just moving on. Okay, real quickly, one last item before we get out of your way. USC, the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, will remove an exhibit dedicated to John Wayne at the late actor's past, quote, bigoted remarks, unquote, have come under increased scrutiny. And saying conversations about racial, systemic racism in the cultural institutions are a change and requires that they consider the role their school can play as a change maker. Now, Wayne was quoted in a Men's Magazine interview in 1971 saying that, quote, I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to the point of responsibility. And for our own people, he said the removal of the Indians, he felt that the Indians were selfishly trying to keep the land for themselves. What can you say? We were here there before anyone else, and I'd try and keep it myself. People are doing that today. Anyway, let's get out of here. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. But